Okay, so we're picking up tonight on page 46. We're in We Agnostics, and where we wrapped up last week was we had read the first full paragraph in 46. Yes, we have agnostic temperament. I think we're going to read that again and probably comment on it again because this paragraph and the next three are really powerful to consider all at once. And so it's worth us cycling back through this paragraph again. Um, David, anything you want to add context or catch up? No, just get into it. Okay. All right. Let me get my screen arranged here. I'll get Ashton where I can spot you for definitions. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So 46, first full paragraph. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. Go ahead, David.
So we have Gnostic temperament. So I have a definition of temperament. I don't know if Ashton has one out of the 1938 dictionary. Do you have that, or would you be able to look that up when you get a minute?
Yeah, I do actually. Sorry, my cat is just
That's okay.
freaking out over
Good
here.
kitty.
So temperament, what I have is a person's nature. So yes, we have an agnostic nature of had these thoughts and experiences. I also do
Thank
have
you.
prejudice as well.
Go ahead.
Please.
So prejudice is preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience. So we found that as soon as we were able to lay aside our preconceived opinion that is not based on reason or actual experience and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commence to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God.
Hey,
Thank
Maria,
you, Ashton.
can you put your question in the chat? Thanks.
Okay.
Go ahead, David.
So we have agnostic temperament. So give me that definition one more time, please, Ashton, from 1938.
A person's nature.
Okay. So my agnostic nature have had these thoughts and experiences. So the prior paragraph, we talked about deep skepticism and askance, which is disapproval or distrust. That's what the definition for that word, askance. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So disapproval or distrust of other people. So let us make haste to reassure you. And then here's the we. The we starts the sentence by saying the first 100. We found that as soon, timeline there, as soon as we were able to lay aside, I circled the word lay aside there, prejudice is the definition that Ashton gave us. Mine is similar to that, is a preconceived thought or an opinion without any experience. Then then I express even a willingness. Willingness is an action there, to believe, to take an action, to have a relationship with power greater than ourselves. We commence to get results. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have a spiritual awakening right there in that moment. I'm not saying you can't when you lay aside old thoughts and old opinions about something, but I will get some sort of results from doing that, letting go of my old ideas. This is what the second step is all about, all the way. It's about letting go of all my old ideas, whatever I think they are. And what we're talking about here is about a relationship with power. But also, as I advance in the work here, I'm going to be talking about all my old ideas about what a relationship should look like, what my finances should look like, what my career should look like, what I should be looking like at the bank line or at the grocery store, at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous. All those ideas of what I think life is supposed to look like is I got to let go of all that stuff. My old prejudices, and then I got to express this by saying, I'm willing to do this work here because I need to have a relationship with power. Because we found out on the last page why we need that. Page 45, you want to go back, first paragraph, lack of power, lowercase p, meaning my strength, lack of my strength. That was my dilemma, to be able to control the amount I drink, or stop and say stop, We had to find power by which we could live. I circled the word live there because that's not what life, I wasn't living much at all prior to coming in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it had to be in capital letters and italic writing, a power greater than ourselves. And then they tell us how we're going to find this power by reading this book, by studying this book and doing this work here. So the willingness, back to page 46, first paragraph, we're talking about how to find God. 3 things I got to do here. I got to let go of my prejudices, my preconceived thoughts or my opinions, what I think this power greater myself should look like or be like. I have to have willingness. I have to believe to seek this power. This is my job in Alcoholics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous all the time, is to continue to seek this power. And then it says that we commence to get those results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define and comprehend that word power, capital letter, which is God, capital letter. Any God of my own understanding is going to be insufficient, but you get to have a God of your own understanding. Any conception of God will work here. And I've also explained to my guys many times, the hundreds of people that I've worked with and took them through the work here, I said, I have a big enough God for both of us. Would that work for you? And some of them said yes. So, yeah, so that's it, wrapped it up for me in that paragraph. Go ahead, David, please.
Yeah, I'll just sort of quickly pound, the main point that I made last week about this paragraph, and that this paragraph and the 3 after it, there are massive promises in each of them that really, I think, bring, as I read them, of course, with some hindsight and having been doing this for a couple of decades, there's a lot of relief in these promises. And I would hope that an open-minded and an open-minded and willing newcomer reading this might get a little sense of relief to hearing these promises. So the main promise here in this paragraph is that we found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves. So David said, there's a couple conditions here, a couple requirements, but if I can do that, we commenced to get results. So what's the result? And what I said last week is the ultimate result is the spiritual awakening. That is the result of these steps. However, when we were sort of going back and forth on this last week, David said, hey, listen, it says results, right? And what does that mean? So the point here, the entire point, irrespective of what 12-step fellowship you're in, is the 12th step, the first part of the phrasing. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result, the singular result of these steps, right? That is the result. But what does it look like to have results? This is what I so frequently go back to on page 27. If you want to bounce back with me real quick, guys, this is Dr. Jung's, my favorite page in the book, Dr. Jung talking to Roland Hazard. And what he was describing is he says, 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down, he says, he's talking about, Roland says, there's no exception. Am I going to die from drinking? And yes, replied the doctor, there is exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. And I'm not going to explain all this again, right? To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, results, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding force of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast aside to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them, also known as results. So the promise of this paragraph is, if I can start to lay aside a little prejudice, crack open the door a little bit, express even a willingness to believe. I don't even have to believe. I just have to consider believing. If I can do that, I'm going to commence to get results. My thinking, my feeling, and my reacting is going to start to get better. All right, moving on. Next paragraph, the bottom paragraph on 46. There's going to be a great promise in here too. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with him. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. To us, the realm of the Spirit is broad, roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. Ashton, you got anything in that one?
I just have the definition of conception.
Please.
So conception is an idea of what something or someone is like. So much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's idea of God.
Thank you. Let me just, maybe before David sort of gives us a larger context here, I want to look at the language. Sometimes some of these paragraphs that get a little clunky or a little flowery, we can get lost in all the words. So I want to make sure we understand what Bill is saying here. So he's much to our relief, because it, coming out of the last paragraph, we discovered we didn't need to consider another's conception of God. So what this sentence is saying is we're going to be able to choose our own God. We do not have to consider the God that we were raised with or weren't raised with, the God of my parents or my neighbor or my community. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient. First of all, it's a promise in and of itself. My idea, however inadequate, right? However not fully formed, however incomplete, was sufficient. That was enough to make the approach. It means it was enough to get me moving towards God as I understand him. Not only to move towards him, but to affect the contact with him. It means I can start engaging with God. As soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence. So think about the beauty of this. What Bill is saying, and this is my experience of so many others that I've seen over the years, I just have to admit that possibly God exists. And not only not your God, my God. Think about how easy Bill is making this for us. He is serving us up a beach ball to hit with a Louisville Slugger. Like, we can't miss this, guys. He said in the last paragraph, just be willing to believe. You don't even have to believe. Just be willing. Now he's saying, you don't imagine how this could have been written. And maybe how Bill wanted to write it at first. Maybe Bill wanted to say, you must acknowledge the existence of God, of my God, of the Bible. But he didn't say that. He said, as soon as we admitted the possible existence, he's saying you can change your mind later. Just today, admit the possible existence of a creative intelligence. And Bill's using different expressions, different euphemisms, right? And that's why you know he's doing that when he's using proper case. So creative intelligence, the spirit of the universe. Sam's not with us tonight. She's ill, but Sam always talks about her higher powers, Mother Nature, capital M, capital N, and she talks to a lot of, women that she helps through the steps or getting, stuck on the higher power stuff with that. So as soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, by the way, not just the spirit of the universe, but the spirit of the universe enveloping and underneath everything. When this happened, we just admit the possible existence. Here's a second part of the promise. We began to be possessed of a new sense of power, thank God, because lack of power is my dilemma, and direction, provided we took other simple steps. Well, why do I need power and direction? I say this a lot. I need to open myself and to seek God so that he uses his power to correct me and to give me direction. This is not about God give me power, because if God gave me power, I would be like a villain in a Marvel movie. I would do all sorts of terrible, selfish, dangerous things with that power. No, don't give me the power. Use your power in me, God, right? Provided we took other simple steps. I think we know what those other simple steps are going to be. Here's another promise, guys. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. That's too flowery. Bill just should have said, if you seek God, he's going to be right there for you. And he has been here the whole time. Guess where he's been hiding? Inside my belly, right? And he hasn't even been hiding. I've been hiding him. I've been covering him up with alcohol and cocaine and all sorts of other things. To us, the realm of spirit, and I know why Bill's using some flowery language here because he's trying to romance us a little bit, right? To us, the realm of the spirit, the world of God is broad, roomy, all inclusive. There's room for all of us and then some. Never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly or honestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men. So many promises in here. And David talks about this all the time. You know, you go to a lot of meetings, you hear the promises. Well, what do people talk about when we talk about the promises? They're talking about the 9-step promises because it's on a laminated sheet called the promises, right? But David's always talking about the 10-step promises, which I'm with David. I love the 9-step promises. I love the 10-step promises even more. But then you get the 5th-step promises, the 3rd-step promises, and sometimes you just got them all over the place. We're here in the 2nd step. Guys, if you never realized this before, this chapter is loaded with 2nd-step promises. It's just recapping in the last paragraph. What an amazing, just express just a willingness to believe. You don't even have to believe. You're going to get results, promise. And then there's a bunch of them here, but the key one is as soon as I admit the possible existence of God, I'm going to begin to get possessed with a new sense of power and direction. So God's going to use his power to tell me how to move forward. He's not going to just hand me power and say, go wield this and do whatever you like. God forbid. Sorry, David. I was just going to get into the words, but I caught a spirit. Go,
God
brother.
bless you, bro.
Yeah.
I love it when you do that. So much to our relief. So it is a relief because it's not a God of my childhood. It doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be your God, if you're a Joel Osteen or whoever that God of understanding is. Whatever it is, it's going to be inadequate, but it's a beginning. Just a beginning. Like what I was asked to do right away was get on my knees, even if pray to God and ask him to keep you clean and sober, and get to a meeting and then start working these steps and get on my knees and ask God to keep me sober. I said, like, what if I don't really believe that God is going to keep me sober? He goes, I don't think God cares. I don't think it's the act. It's the action until I start doing the action repetitively and I start working these steps and I started going through this book here. I started having a relationship with God. Why? I let go all my prejudices. I became willing to do the work here. And then all of a sudden, then I started seeking God and his power in my life. Bill gives us euphemisms for God here, a lot of them in this paragraph, anything with a capital letter in the beginning of it. So let me start at the top of that paragraph with David read, and I just finished saying to consider notice concession to God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and effect a contact with him. So to produce a contact with God, then it says, as soon, that means now, as soon as we admitted the possible existence, so as soon as I'm able to admit to myself that there's a possible existence of a creative intelligence. Why do I need creative intelligence? Joe Hawk, here he is. Creative intelligence I need creative intelligence. Creative is power for my will, so I do better. And intelligence is directions for my mind, so I know better. Took me a while to process that. It's good stuff. So creative intelligence, then spirit of the universe, another euphemism, capital letters, underlines the totality of things. Here's step 3. We began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction. The word power in that sentence is not capitalized. He is going to enter my life and I'm going to have access to his power and his direction, provided we took other simple steps. What are those other simple steps? Steps 4 through 9. And to piggyback on what David talks about, for me to recover from alcoholism and drug addiction, I do the work steps 4 through 9. And yes, the 9th step promises, everyone calls them the promises, are great observations. They do come true when we're working them. But here's the deal. I worked the 4 through 9 to have recovered. I do the work in 10 to maintain something. I'm going to do 10, the disciplines in 10, to maintain my conscious contact with God in 11. That is how I stay unblocked. see, a lot of times they say, oh, the step 10 and 11 are maintenance steps. No, it's effectiveness and understanding of his will is what I'm trying to do. But if I'm going to maintain a conscious contact with God, I'm going to have to do 10. Spot check inventory. My actions will tell me whether or not I believe I need to do that or not. And I have found out that I need God. I desperately need God. Not just to stay sober. When I say sober, I just don't mean putting the plug in jug. I mean walking around freedom of the body and the self. Back to the text. God does not make too hard of terms with those who seek him. I circle the word seek. This is what I'm trying to do all the time. I'm seeking that power. I'm inviting God in. I've said this many, many times on Zoom and with sponsees and all people. When I go somewhere, I open up the door and let God walk in first. That is an acknowledgement of that power. I am seeking that power. I have had a lot of good 24 hours of sobriety, a lot. I had a couple down in the dump days, sure. Not by myself, I haven't. I invited God in the morning on my knees and asked him to keep me clean and sober and to direct my thinking. Finish that paragraph. It says, to us, the realm, capital R, of the Spirit, capital S, is broad and roomy, all-inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who are earnestly seeking him. It is open, we believe, to all men and women, and whatever your pronoun is. It doesn't matter. This is a God big enough, infinite power, no beginning, no end. This is where I got to in my life. No beginning, no end. You know, this is written in the 1930s. That's why he ended it with men. And the last thing I'll say about that is all gods are personal to us. But all I have to do is lay aside all my old ideas of what I think God is, because when I put limits on what God can do, then God is not powerful enough for me. I've got to not put limits on this power in my life. And I've seen, dude, my life looks 180 degrees different than it did even 5 years ago. I want to continue to grow in effectiveness and understanding of God's will. I have a wonderful, healthy relationship with all my children, with all my grandchildren, with my customers, with my wife, with all my in-laws, with all my family. It's like I can't remember the last time I got into a conflict. And if I did, there's directions in the book right before that happens. I'm supposed to pause when agitated or doubtful. And what am I doing there when I do that? I'm inviting God in again. I'm seeking that power. This works 100% of the time. I just need to get the heck out of the way.
And I think, again, in the spirit of language, the word seek is used here. And as I regularly bring up, Joe and Charlie, Big Book Comes Alive. If you've never listened, please go listen. Nobody explains the Big Book and dumbs it down for dummies like us better than those two guys. And Joe McHugh does a whole thing on, it's not about finding, right? The act of finding is about locating, right? Seeking and searching is about gaining an understanding, right? I don't need to locate God because God's not lost. What I've done is I've obscured him, right? Alcohol and cocaine and sex and money and certainly pomp and calamity. But I have to seek him. Right? I want to try to grow my understanding of him, grow my relationship. Very important terminology distinction here. Okay, top of 47. We're going to have at least one major promise here as well. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. Man, I feel like we should just pause here for a second. I think we can talk about this. So, this always makes me think of a experience David and I had. So peak pandemic went on for a couple of years, right? We were doing every Friday night a treatment center that we usually went to once a month. They said, hey, can you just do it every Friday on Zoom, right? Because we couldn't have any speakers in. And so we said, all right. So we would talk to the men's unit every Friday. And, we're talking about God. And there was this guy that agitated. He couldn't wait to the end to just tell us, I hate all this God stuff and God doesn't exist. It's been scientifically proven. I mean, he just went off and we just let him go, right? I mean, we're not arguing, right? What's the point? And this guy just didn't want to hear it, and we just sort of moved on because sort of rebutting it wasn't going to be any good. And we got there again next week, and same group of guys for the most part was there. He was gone. A few other people, it's transient and treatment center. And these guys were all apologetic. Oh, and we say, hey man, it's okay. We're not selling God. We're not selling AA. We're telling you what we understand and what we do. And we talked with them about when therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. Now listen. Is it a failure on our part that we didn't refer to this part of the book as we're talking about it? Possibly. Maybe this guy was just going to be agitated no matter what. But I think this is a really important concept that we need to get out there. We need to fire this shot across the bow pretty early. And I know it's in the steps. And so if a newcomer comes and they see those scary steps on the wall, they're going to see as you understand them. But a newcomer is going to need more understanding than that. Right? We can't gain comprehension of the steps and what's behind them just by reading something off the wall.
Yeah, could God be more, or could God, not Bill, Bill's not God, Bill's just agent of God. Could Bill be any more roomy and open, even in that first sentence, even, our own conception of God. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. I mean, kind of the first time I read that, I went, you mean like Burger King, you can get it your way? Well, in the beginning, you can kind of get it like that. You're going to have to grow that, but that's a beginning, right? It's a beginning, it's just, and as we read through this page and the next page, Bill is going to repeat himself over and over and over again about what we need to let go of here. And I'll give you a spoiler alert. It's of our prejudices, our old ideas, whatever that is. He's going to beat us whole. This is a jackhammer. This is me, got to let go of my old ideas. But I'll tell you what, if you've never done this work before, you will find that you've completed step 2 at the end of these two pages. If you can let aside prejudice and let aside your willingness, congratulations. You've done step 2. Let's go to 3.
Yeah. We could whip through 1, 2, and 3, a couple of hours, depending on how many pages, 3 hours, maybe max.
Mm-hmm.
When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God, your own conception of God, not mine, not David, not Ashton's, not Rob's or Janice's or anybody else, your own. This applies to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. At the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. All right, I gotta stop here and I gotta read this again. Guys, at the start, this was all we needed. So if I'm, again, David just brought it up, if I lay aside the prejudice, then I'm going to get my first conscious relation with God as I understand him. And then more promise. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. That was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah. So back to the top, after the first sentence, it says, this applies to other spiritual expressions, which you'll find in this book. So I got to let go of all my old ideas. This is a textbook meant to be read and studied. Bill has wonderful ideas about, and what this whole book is about a relationship with God. That's what this thing's about. So let go of all my ideas and how I seek God, what I have to let go of, what I'm blocked from, what the work I have to do here. Like, I know some guys, I'm not doing that 9th step. Well, you know what, dude, you're in step 1. Don't worry about 9 right now. It's what you don't have the ability to do it right now. I don't have the ability to do 9 when I come in. Although sometimes people say, I want to do 9 tonight. I want to go home and apologize to my wife. Well, amends is plural. It's not amend. It's a plural. This is my lifetime. I'm not going to go into a 9 step thing, so I won't do that right now to you. But so this applies to you and other spiritual expressions which we find in this book. Do not let is a must. Prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So all my old ideas, I just got to let go of my ideas. I told you this is what Bill's going to do to us for 2 pages. At the start, this is all we needed to commence spiritual growth. That is a promise. This is a start. This is a jumping off point for us to have some spiritual growth, to affect our first conscious relationship with God as we understood him. Here's another promise. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which seemed entirely out of reach. That is faith. I can't explain it. I'm just telling you that's what that is. And that was growth. Another description of what growth looks like. But if we wish to grow, here's another must. We had to begin somewhere. So we use our own conception, however limited it was. That's okay. However limited it was. As long as I made a beginning, just making a beginning here, that it might be a power greater than myself. Does my very life depend upon me having a relationship with a power outside of myself? I have proven to myself over and over and over again, when I take a drink, I break out in craving. And when I stop, I cannot stay stopped. And everything on page 52 have come true in my life. They're running me. Those bedevilments, they own me. So, of course, I need Alcoholics Anonymous, and I desperately need to have a power greater than myself, which this book is all about. How to get connected to that power and stay connected to that power all day long. Each step is linked together in a specific order for me to be able to do that. And by the time I get to 12, I will be able to do those amends because I'll be practicing these principles in all my affairs.
I'm just wondering, like, what are some spiritual expressions which you may find in this book that could be objectionable? Well, prayer and meditation is a couple massive ones, right? Coming in and looking at that 11th step, I'm like, what? Am I going to turn into some sort of monk? I'm going to have to be on my knees. What is this? Right? Like, I'm immediately prejudiced against that. But as David said, it's a must. Don't let any prejudice, any preconceived notions, any prejudgments about what we're talking about deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. So don't let old David stand in the way of new David, right? Like, clean slate. Let's wipe the board, get the chalk off, and start to ask, what do these really mean? What have they meant to me? What could they mean to me? And the beautiful promise, if I can do this, if I can just say, okay, I'm willing. All right, it sounds hokey, prayer, meditation, and God, and amends, and all this stuff. But okay, I'm willing to go with it because, the David way wasn't working so well. So at the start, this is all I need to commence some spiritual growth. What a promise. I'm going to grow spiritually, which is critical because spirituality, as I came into recovery, was at an all-time low. Had no spirituality. My soul was as blackened and cancerous as it could be. So a wonderful promise that I'm going to start to grow spiritually. And what's that going to look like? I'm going to be growing spiritually. It means I'm going to have my first conscious contact with God, right? And I'm going to start to accept some things which seemed entirely out of reach. Like, wow, maybe I can get into a little of this prayer and meditation. Well, okay, so my sponsor said every morning say 3rd step prayer and 7th-step prayer until you figure out what kind of prayers you want to do. And I go and do that for a few weeks or a few months or a few years. That's okay. Because maybe my practice of doing that works and starts to commence some of those results, right? That was growth. Yes. Okay. Getting going, making a basic effort. But if I want to really grow, got to start somewhere. Start with that own conception, however limited it was. And I'll say this too. Limited conception of God, to me, good conception of God. I don't need to paint his picture. I don't need to define or describe him. I need to know it's not me. And I know because God is everything or is nothing, so to me is everything. How in the hell am I supposed to conceive or define or describe everything? I don't have enough words or breaths in my lifetime. 4th key paragraph. Going to be some
Can
great
I jump
promises
in real quick, David?
Oh, please, yes.
Sorry, it's something
Oh,
that
please.
Sam told me, because it's kind of like when you start to picture or try to describe what your higher power is, that's you putting yourself into the situation, trying to control it. So again, one of the things that we need to get away from is self.
Mm.
Well
Thank you,
said.
Ashton.
Thank you. All right, fourth paragraph of great second step promises here. We're on the second paragraph in 47. We needed, so it sounds like another must. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Here it is. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. This is the essence of step 2 right there, right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Ash, you got any? No? Okay. So let's talk about this. At this point, so we were told, lay aside a little prejudice, become willing to believe, and then lay aside a little prejudice, and we're going to start to have a conscious contact with God, and then lay aside a little bit more prejudice, and I'm going to start to get close to God. I'm going to start to grow, and now it's saying, if I can answer this question, do I now believe? I can say I don't believe. Well, am I willing to believe? There's a power greater than myself. He can't make this any easier. And I'm going to say this. If I'm not willing to believe, it does not connote belief. I'm willing to believe. At some point, I will start believing. If I can't do that, I got to go back to 1. Because if I'm still holding on to, I've got another way to whip this thing, I got another system, I got another approach, I got a way to outmuscle it, outthink it, outrun it, outbargain it, I can't get into 2. I got to go back and ask myself, do I really believe I'm powerless? And if I do really believe that I'm powerless in 1, and I recognize that my life is unmanageable, that I'm desperately, terribly, spiritually ill, then at the worst, I better be willing to believe, even if I don't believe, that there's a power greater than myself. And this was a tough question for me coming in because I thought I was a pretty powerful guy. I went through life with brute force, and brute thinking, brute intelligent bullying. Right? This was my approach. Brute everything. Thought I was powerful. What I figured out was cocaine and other things whipped me. I was terribly powerless to them. So I came to terms. I was powerless and I was willing to believe. I didn't believe right away, but I was willing to believe. I was motivated by pain. So as soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he's on his way. So I just have to be willing to believe again, and I'm well on my way. Well on my way to what? Well on my way to having a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. I'm sure I said this last week and maybe the week before. How this works is I don't have a waterfall moment the first time I formally work the steps where I do work, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then finally have my spiritual awakening. That is not how it happens, guys. It starts in 2, based on these 4 paragraphs, laying aside some old thinking and being willing. And my spiritual awakening starts to open up slowly, wider, 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 wider. And then I get into 3 and 4 and really in 4 and start doing some work. Because there's no work in 1, 2, and 3. It's just talk, it's comprehension. Right? That spiritual awakening begins in 2. I'm well on my way to the ultimate result and those many results along the way. My thinking, my feeling, and my attitudes are going to get replaced with healthier ones. It's been repeatedly proven among us. Proven. Happened. I don't know if there's some sort of medical definition of proven or just a normal one, Ash, if you got anything. Been proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, and I'll let David talk about the building stuff, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
So David pointed out right away, he says we need it. So let's change. I changed that to must. We must ask ourselves, but one short question: do I now believe, or am I willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself? How did I get to that place when I was agnostic, don't believe in anything at all? Well, let's go back to page 46. We read it tonight, and we read it in the first paragraph, 46. And we found out that this is what happens if I'm going to start to believe. We found as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commence to get results. Then go back to page 47. So I'm going to ask myself that short question. I must ask this question of myself. And I've asked my guys, what do you need your God to be? And they may ask me, what is my God for me? My God is all powerful, all knowing, always on time, efficient, loving and caring. Why is he that? Because I'm none of those things. I need that power in my life to have a healthy relationship with others, small o, lowercase, or uppercase O is God. And when I see that in the book. So back to the text, page 47, second paragraph. Here's the promise. As soon as a man can say he does believe or he's willing to believe, we emphatically assure him he's on his way. Congratulations, you've just taken step 2. You have. You just taken step 2. Mm-hmm. That's it. There was no work. It was about belief, making a decision that I don't have the power to stay sober on my own. But here's what he says. As soon as a man says that he does believe, underline does believe, or is underline willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he's on his way. Enthusiastically assure him he's on his way. I am all about giving that guy a vision for what his life is going to look like. I have an experience of a lot of 24 hours. I have a lot of guys I've been sponsoring for decades. I can give their experiences too. I can have them call them, emphatically give them a vision of what their life can look like. And then it says, it has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone is indispensable and fundamental beginning or basis. A stone at a corner of a building, which is often used for holding historical information. The reason why I bring that up, because as we study this book, if you don't know what a cornerstone is, when you get to page 56, Bill's going to talk about it again. You're going to be like, what is he talking about here? Cornerstone and keystone, what is all this stuff? So we need to know that kind of stuff. That's why we study this book. I think that's all I have there.
And, I should say this too. I talked about, first 3 steps. There's no work to be done. The only work to be done is sitting down with a newcomer, taking them through excerpts of the first step, second step, and the third step, so that the newcomer has comprehension of these things and says, yeah, I get it. I'm in. And for the love of God, don't go, my recommendation, what I do not go word by word with a brand new person. We got to get them to God in a hurry so they don't get out there drinking and drugging or whatever else they're doing to kill themselves. And I don't know, a year ago or a year and a half ago, something like that, me and David and another friend of ours, Heather, did a 12-week, 12-hour, took the steps. We did it Saturday morning, so we had the whole international crew with us. And I just bring this up because if you have the link to our podcast and you look at Journey 5, there's 12 episodes. We go through, and it's got the exact content that with David and I, when we're taking a newcomer through, those are the pages we go through. And of course, we do like we do here, we explain it. So if you're looking for a way, as I said, get through 1, 2, and 3 in 3 hours, we show you how to do it and are taking the steps, 12-part episode. And the other thing is, if you go to the website, purposeofthisbook.com, and go to the very bottom, we've got some attachments. We've got a summary of all the pages for each step in there too. So you get the summary of all the pages, that relate to step 1, 2, 3, and then you listen to the podcast. If you ever feel uncomfortable, you don't feel qualified or fearful about taking someone through the steps, go use that as a resource. Is it perfect? No. Is it the only way to do it? No. It is one way to do it. And if you need some help, you need a resource, that's why we put it there. That's why we did it.
Yeah, we did it in 12 hours, but we probably put in 12,000 hours trying to figure out exactly how to do it. And I don't mean that we looked at the book and studied it like that. We listened to people that we are very impressed with their knowledge and experience of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. the Howards, the Mark Houston's, Joe Hawks, Katie and Charlie Parkers, the Ramers. I mean, all these people that I've listened to for years and years and years, and we just play. If it was a cassette tape, like when I first got sober, like the Earl Hightower tape that I had when I first got sober, I wore that baby out. Right? I just wore it out. I had to go get another one. So we would have wore those things out. And I still listen. I go back to Joe and Charlie all the time. David brought it up earlier. That is the best medicine for me to learn something here that I've ever. They are a godsend to us. They really, really are. I just love the simplicity of the whole thing. And the way they talk to you, it's like you just want to get a hot cocoa and a pillow and your pen and your highlighter and just write everything they say down. You just do.
It's like sitting on Grandpa's knee, right? Both
yeah. Yeah.
I did find the definition for proven.
Please,
David.
What do you got?
So proven, demonstrated by evidence to be true or existing. So it has been repeatedly demonstrated by evidence to be true or existing among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
That's what I was looking for. Some sort of definition that talked about demonstrated by evidence. Go ahead, Ash.
Yes. I was just going to say, like, when it's used medically, it's mostly talking about medication. So, like, when like those ads talking about any type of meds and they say clinically proven, it just means consumers have tried it.
Okay. So guess what? Consumers of this, we consume it, right? Have proven as well that this works. What Bill's saying here. Do this, lay aside the prejudice, become willing to believe. It's proven, and you'll prove it to yourself. It works. You'll start to get better. You start to get results. This was great news for us. So bottom paragraph 47. So what we had just said, right? Repeatedly proven among us that upon the simple cornerstone of wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. So that was great news for us. For we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has. Sure, it would work if I could only believe as he believes. What I cannot accept is surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. The simpler level here is belief. We must begin with belief before we get into faith. There's an order of operations. I'm always talking about things. We got to do this in the right order. And again, speaking of Joe and Charlie, Charlie gives a great example, like a metaphor of this. I moved to a new town and I'm having car problems. And I need a mechanic, but I don't know anybody here. So I say, Ash, can you recommend a mechanic to me? And Ash says, yes. Go to Rob's, body shop. He's going to do good work and it's going to be a fair price. And I believe Ash when Ash gives me this information. That's belief. Then I go to Rob and he does good work. It's done on time. He quoted the price. That's what I ended up paying. And I did not have the same problem with the car. So next time I have an issue with my automobile, I don't have to ask Ash. Ash already told me. I know I can go back to Rob because Rob already proved, demonstrated with evidence that he does good work. I have faith now because it's been proven that I can go back and I'm going to get the same results. This is why Joe and Charlie are brilliant because they take these things that we want to make so complex and they just dumb it down for us. I need it dumbed down. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and another one that they use, or someone used it, I can't remember who it was, is, okay, so when I was a kid on Saturday mornings, we watched cartoons. And I loved the Roadrunner, and I loved the Flintstones, and I love Bugs Bunny and all that stuff. And on those cartoons were always commercials for cereal. They're playing to the audience. So next time I go to the grocery store with my mom or dad, I'm pulling on my mom's apron strings and say, hey, I want that cereal because they told me the box it's got crunchy, it's got little fruit flakes in it, and it's going to be so wonderful. I only believe what the commercials tell me until I pour it in my bowl and I pour milk over it, and then I have it, and I go, wow, that commercial was spot on. And next time I buy that box, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Now I've gone. I don't have to have faith. I can't have faith. Belief and faith are two different things, but I go from belief to faith simply because of a prior experience. So now, I don't know. I just like that one. That's a fun one for me. Yeah. I don't know where I got that. I'm sure it was Joe and Charlie. So David explained the first couple sentences here. So in the middle of the paragraph where it says, when people presented us with spiritual approaches, not religion, how frequently did we all say, I wish I had what that man has? How did I get a sponsor? That sponsor had something that I wanted. He looked like he was comfortable in his own skin. You know, I come to find out through my belief that he was. And then as I built a relationship with him, as I did this work, because he matched my willingness and about the time I'm going to do the work, I had found out through my faith that, yes, he does have something that I want. He still does. I've had about 4 sponsors since I've been sober, one of them for 18 years, and this the Judd, who's my sponsor now for the last 5 or 6, and he still has something that I want. And I meet with my sponsor every Friday at 4 o'clock at his house because that's something he wants to do. And I don't question that because I want what he has. So back to the text. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So they seem certain of him, not so certain to me. I'm going to have to experience this. Again, it goes from belief to faith, so I can have a prior experience with this stuff. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. Simpler level is what I need. This is not complicated, guys. It really isn't complicated. I don't have to have faith. Hope equals belief. And when I came in Alcoholics Anonymous, I was hopeless. And the opposite of hope is a vision beyond my present circumstances. That's the definition of hope for me. A vision beyond my present circumstances. Not a lot of faith in that either. It's just a belief. But then I have some experience with a few 24 hours as I commence to grow a relationship and seek his power. I have so much freedom in my life. It just blows me away. I'm tickled to death to take my inventory, my 11-step inventory every night, my evening review. I love doing that today. I never miss those kind of stuff because I believe that is so vital to my recovery to stay connected to power. I wouldn't miss it. It's about conscious contact with God all day long.
I think that's a good place to stop for the night. We're just about out of time.
Mm-hmm.